Welcome to the very first episode of my new podcast series, Fridays with Larry. This will be a more laid-back podcast with conversations and some talk of what's happening in and around the Fishers area. This also provides an opportunity for me to introduce the sponsor of my podcast series, Citizens State Bank. Citizens State Bank, a local institution located in Indiana with 11 branches, including one in 9 Municipal Drive, downtown Fishers, along with locations in Carmel and Pendleton. So, with that in mind, let's get started. Welcome to our first podcast. I've done some podcast series in the past. Some have worked out well, some have not. But I'm hoping that you will enjoy this podcast, and I am very happy to be partnering with Citizens State Bank, a bank that has roots in Indiana. It's an Indiana institution, and I think dealing with one institution that is located in our Hoosier State with a location here in Fishers, as well as locations Carmel, Pendleton, and there are several other locations in the east central Indiana area. So my thanks to Citizens State Bank. Look forward to partnering with them on this podcast and my other podcast series. What I'm going to ask you to do as a favor is to subscribe to this podcast. Just hit that subscribe button, if you will, please. And, just a comment if you would like. Love to hear your comments about the podcast, good, bad, or indifferent. Just any kind of comment is appreciated. I'm going to start out just by going over things that have happened in Fishers in the past week. Sunday was the day things really got started. It's unusual for that to happen on a Sunday in Fishers, but more than 200 people showed up for an event to commemorate the life of Renee Good, the lady who was shot and killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I was surprised at the number of people in a very cold 32-degree night that came for a roughly 1-hour event. I wasn't able to stay for the whole hour. And, guy 74 years old, let's say the cold weather was not very kind to me at my age. And there are others, I'm sure, that felt the same way. But there were all sorts of people there. There were adults. There were people brought their children. People brought their dogs. It was an interesting situation. Let me move on to some of the political news. Victoria Sparks, the incumbent 5th District member of Congress representing the Fishers area and a large part of this slice of Indiana, filed for re-election for another term. Then Democrat J.D. Ford, a current sitting state senator, has filed for that congressional seat. He'll be running in the Democratic primary, she in the Republican primary. If those two end up winning those primaries, they will face each other in the November election. I think J.D. Ford's got an uphill battle. Some people think it may be a Democratic year. It's a little early to tell, but things are trending that way now. Things can change. But J.D. Ford is going to make a run on the Democratic side. If you take a look at it just objectively, look at the Cook Political Report. The Cook Political Report is well respected. It says that the 5th District in Indiana performs 8 percentage points, if I can say it right, 8 percentage points more than Republicans do on the national average. So it's a very Republican district. Basically felt that advantage both the 2020 and 2024 presidential elections in Indiana in that district. Larry Sabato at the University of Virginia, who does a lot of this work in Congress and the Senate, describes Indiana District 5 as a safe Republican district. So we'll see what happens, but J.D. Ford has put his foot forward, and he does plan to run. Also want to mention the Fishers Event Center is having a free event where you can come and watch the IU National Championship football game. It's still is interesting just to hear those words. But yes, Indiana University is in the national championship game and even the favorite in that game. but it's free to come to the event center. You do have to have a ticket, get online, and you can get a ticket for free. The parking is free, but I think they want to pass out tickets to make sure they don't have more people than they can handle. All of the, of course, concession stands will be open. By the way, the Town Hall Building Corporation, which oversees the event center for the city of Fishers, had a meeting this past week, and the event center is meeting all of its financial commitments to pay the bonds that the city must pay to pay off the debt on that building. So everything is going at or slightly above the projections there. Hamilton Southeastern School Board, every time I post a story about this on my website, I always get a lot of attention to that. Another 4-3 vote, and these are happening more often than not. And the 4-3 vote was on the officers. Tiffany Pasco will be the board president for 2026. And so that there were two different votes. The one that passed was the one with Tiffany Pasco as the president of the school board. There is an election coming up in November where 4 board members will have their seats up for election, and they will be running within their individual districts. We have at-large and individual district elections. 2026 will be the 4 different districts. The candidates will run, and people voting only in that district will vote for that member of the school board. 2 longtime HSE school teachers, administrators are retiring. Jim Brown, longtime athletic director at Fishers High School, is retiring at the end of the school year, as is Janet Chandler, former president of the Teachers Association, also the leader of the We the People and mock trial teams, a very, very important person in civic education in this whole area. So I wish the best to both of them as they finish out the school year and head into retirement. Well deserved on both sides. You're probably aware Kyle Walker has decided not to run for re-election in District 31 for the state Senate. So that being an open seat, lots of people are interested in running. Juanita Albright, the school board member for Hamilton Southeastern Schools, she has filed her intention to run in the Republican primary. And the day we record this, Tiffany Ditlevson, a member of the Fishers City Council, has announced that she is filing, and she had formed an exploratory committee and is now committing and filing to be a candidate. The Democratic side has at least 3 candidates: Carrie Forrestall, the Marion County Sheriff, Lasima Packett, a local advocate and military veteran, and Catherine Torzuski, who's a realtor in the Geist area and has been involved in political campaigns in the past. The primary election is now set for May the 5th. The filing for office is going on as we speak. One last thing I want to talk about. I've worked as a journalist off and on since 1973. And I took 28 years off to be a civil servant, so I wasn't doing that entire time. But I went back to it when I started this news website and, of course, these podcasts. But I've been off and on a journalist since that year of 73. And in the late 1970s and early 80s, there were controversies. Prosecuting attorneys and investigators were trying to get access to reporters' notes they had taken. And prosecutors were going to court trying to get their hands on reporters' notes. I never had any worry about anybody getting my notes. If they got my notes, they couldn't read them. My handwriting is indecipherable to just about anybody else but me, sort of my own shorthand, if you will. But there's a new flap on the media and the courts because the government has raided, essentially, the home of a Washington Post reporter. This is unheard of. It's almost never done. And it has to do with an investigation over classified material being revealed. In the past, prosecutors have never had to go after the reporter. They normally are not going to prosecute a reporter. There have been a few odd exceptions to that, but for the most part, the government does not prosecute reporters, and they really haven't tried to get information from reporters. There are usually other ways prosecutors can get this information much more effectively. Now, I've seen both sides of this. I've spent 28 years in the federal government with access to information either classified or covered by the Privacy Act. And the Privacy Act keeps, for instance, tax information, your personal tax information private. If I were to have revealed that to a reporter or anybody else for that matter, I could have been criminally or civilly prosecuted by the federal government as an employee. If it had been sent to a reporter, they normally wouldn't go after the reporter, they'd go after me as the federal employee. I think a raid on a reporter's home is a very, very bad sign. I think it's a bad situation. I don't think that's how the government should go after these investigations. I understand why they have to do that. I just think there are other ways to investigate government employees who may be violating the law by revealing information that is not something they should be under the law, revealing to a reporter or really anybody else. So we're going to talk about local developments. Again, I'm going to have some interviews, discussions during these podcasts. Coming up in this podcast, I'm having a discussion with a member of the Fishers Police Department. They are doing their best to try and recruit some new members. There's a reason why they need new police officers. They've got a number of them retiring, and I talked to the officer about that and several other things. So let's hear my conversation about recruiting at the Fishers Police Department. Well, the city of Fishers is looking to hire more police officers, and I have a police officer with me right now. Brad Myers deals with hiring and training for the Fishers Police Department. So, Officer Myers, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Larry.
I want to ask you about how policing has changed in Fishers. And you've been with the department 28 years. I moved to Fishers in 1991. I think the population was 9,000, something
Sounds
like
about right.
that at the time. We were a town at that time. Now we're a city of 107,000, one of the largest cities in the state. So policing has definitely changed. So as
Right.
you look to hire more police officers, tell me a little bit about what you as a department are looking for in a new police officer.
So I believe what we're looking for is those individuals who have an interest, passion to serve their community. So Larry, we were just talking about the 28 years ago when I came on, I think we had about 30,000 people, and I think it still rings true today. We were looking at that moment and that time for officers, people who wanted to serve. And that thread has continued on into today where we're at. We continue to strive for bringing on the right people to serve for the right purposes.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting about your department is you do have some people who maybe are just out of the academy or you hire and send to the police academy, but you also have been known to recruit officers from other departments who already have experience. Do you like a mix of both, or do you like these experienced officers coming into your department?
We like to have a mix. So what we do is we're strategic in how we do hire people. If we have vacancies that we need to fill, then we're going to be looking more towards some experienced officers. However, when we're looking at bringing on new people, it doesn't seem to matter simply because they're coming on and they're learning how to be a police officer the Fishers way. If we're bringing on a new person who wants to become a police officer, they're simply going off to the academy to come in and learn Fishers. The people who are coming in from, or the officers who are coming in from different agencies, they come over. Yes, they have the experience, but they also have to understand what it's like to serve with Fishers.
Well, you mentioned the Fisher's Way. How would you describe the Fisher's Way?
It's so what I've observed over the course of the years that I've served here is it's a certain camaraderie that we have, and I think I've seen over time is the development of a bond, and that has slowly become the Fisher's Way. It is serving with a purpose. It's learning the person, the brother or sister that you serve next to. It's having family meals. It's learning the person that you serve with. That's why I call it the Fisher's Way. I've been fortunate enough to be able to be a supervisor in this agency and bringing on new people and teaching them, listen, this is Fishers. We serve our agency and we make sure that we protect our community in a very, like I said, and I just describe it as the Fisher's way.
Yeah, and Fishers, we believe it's a uh, consists of about 107,000 people now. We think it'll be about 110,000 by the time the year is over. What's a good staffing level for you? What would you like to see as the optimum staffing level for uniformed officers?
So are you per shift? Because we have
What,
4 different
what,
shifts.
well, let's talk about overall, and then you can talk about per shift as well too.
So we're currently we're sworn at 128 officers that are currently working with Fishers, and they could be working in different capacities, right? But per on a night that say you're sleeping, you're going to have about 17 to 18 officers who are out serving this community, which currently that seems to be serving us well. But as population increases, we're going to see a need for more officers.
Interesting, because that is a question I get every now and then from people around the community. How many officers are on the street patrolling or working at a time? And I say, well, it depends on what they're doing. You know, you
Right.
have some officers doing one type of work, another, some are doing investigations, some are out on the road. So you say about 17 or 18 officers at a time who are out patrolling. Is that a good number at any given time?
That's a good number. And then of course you have an increase in, like you said, we might have an investigation that we're conducting. We might have certain specialty teams that are out working. So you never know exactly. It could be as much as 50 at one point if it's a certain investigation. But on a typical evening or a typical day, it's going to end up being probably right around that number.
You know, we're a suburban community, much like our neighbors are to near us, or even our suburban neighbors around the Indianapolis metro ring. How does Fishers compare in terms of, benefits, training, advancement opportunities? How do we match up with those departments?
I would say very well. Our training is the best in the state, and I've had the opportunity to be able to serve and train under this leadership, and it is by far, I would say, one of the best in the state, if not the best. I would say our benefit packages that we have, as far as people coming in and being able to be cared for well by our agency, as far as healthcare, any type of the equipment that we're issued, the training opportunities, like I said before, we have so many different opportunities for people to succeed in Fishers. And I think what that does is that makes us extremely attractive when bringing someone in.
One thing I've talked to some city officials about is that you can retire as a police officer, I think it's 20, 25 years, depending on the situation. You're eligible to retire. Not everybody retires at that point. The reason I mention that is that, as Fishers really began to grow, that was about 20, 25 years ago.
Correct.
So you are seeing an awful lot of officers who were hired in as we were growing as a community that are
Mhm.
now eligible to retire. And I think that's one reason you're in a hiring mode right now. Is it not true?
That is correct. Yeah. So I had the opportunity to be able to serve in this office so that we could bring like-minded people into Fishers. I hired on with 4 people, and those people have since moved on, except for another that I'm currently working with right now. But the other people who have hired in shortly after me or hired in before, there are still people who are that are serving here in Fishers because they still have a passion to serve with Fishers because of how they're cared for.
This question will probably vary depending upon where you are in terms of what city in which you serve as an officer. But
Mhm.
can you give me like a typical day? What's it like to be a police officer working the streets of Fishers in a typical day or night?
So I'll take you through what I used to do as far as patrol supervision. We would come in and we would meet with our staff. We would give assignments as far as what district they might be patrolling, what specific hotspots we might encounter over the week, and then it is up to the officer. So they'll be given assignments. And then most likely what we will do as officers is we'll get together and we will begin patrolling the areas that maybe there are some issues in, whether it be a traffic issue, whether it be a high crash area, or any other type of call for service that maybe we might have to respond to. That is what an officer is doing throughout the day. They're responding to calls for service.
Now, you mentioned training. When I hear training, a lot of people think, well, every police officer goes to the academy. There's an academy in Indiana where police officers go and are trained and then go to serve in their local community. But there's really more to training a police officer than that. Explain how that works.
So we have on staff training. We have officers who are throughout any given situation or any given circumstances, they're going to be trained in a variable amount of topics, right? So we have a training facility here at Fishers that we bring in, and it's usually filled weekly, where we're bringing in people learning about current drug trends. We're learning about missing people and how we can find missing people, and it can vary anywhere from the elementary, how to make a traffic stop, all the way up to how we're getting into different vehicles or how we're locating illegal narcotics, any type of advanced investigations. There can be special weapons type of training. Anything that we do, we have I would say a master trainer or a certified person who knows that skill and is able to train that skill.
So, I think that every community maybe has a little different answer to this question. So I'll ask it as it applies to Fishers. When you are looking for a new police officer, tell me the sorts of qualities you're looking for.
What we are looking for here is we're looking for someone who's going to be, number one, humble. They're going to come in with the ability to say, all right, I don't know everything, and I'm willing to be trained in everything. And then a person who is going to be selfless, that is going to think less of themselves and more towards the community, and someone who's going to care for the person that they serve alongside.
I started working as a news reporter in the 1970s, been doing it off and on. I haven't been a reporter all those years. But I do remember hearing this term a lot, community policing. And I think that people have different definitions out in the community as to what that community policing means. So, to a police officer involved in hiring and training, what does community policing mean to you?
I think it's the last area that I just spoke on. I think, well, not the second area I spoke on, and that's thinking less of yourself and thinking more towards the community, the people that are within Fishers that they serve, whether they're responding to a call for service or whether they're simply just patrolling an area. I think it's outward thinking. It's thinking less of themselves and responding with an attitude of service, right? That enables a person that's going to a call for service to say, all right, this isn't about me. This is about the person that I'm serving. I think that's what community service is. And it's also thinking outside the box. If it's a person that's walking alongside the road that maybe they may be hurt and you can tell, then you get out of your car and you go and see, is that person okay? Or simply just talking with a kid, or just, you stop out and you say hi to a kid or you say hi to a family. I think that's what building relationships with our community looks like as far as being a police officer.
Yeah, I think that if you look at every community in Indiana, they're looking for good police officers. So we're competing with these other communities. You've talked about benefits and some of the other what you offer the officer. Uh, there probably are people who are in different lines of work than law enforcement who have eventually become police officers. Have you seen that? And if so, what sorts of situations have you seen?
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sure. But I'm sorry if I got to be too confusing on that. Sometimes people get into law enforcement after they've done something else. Maybe they've
Sure,
been working security somewhere else, or maybe some people are teachers or do all kinds of work, and then they say, I think I'd like to become a police officer. How
sure.
often do you see that happen? And do you think that's something that certain people might want to consider?
We see it quite often where a person has a change of heart and they say, listen, I'm seeing what's happening and I want to be a change for my community. Whether they're serving in banking or accounting or something else where they're like, they have a fire to be able to say, hey, I want to serve and I want to serve my community. We do see that. In fact, we're accepting applications right now, and we currently have 30 people. And out of that 30, I would venture to say that there's probably about 10 to 12 who have worked in an office capacity. So it's something, and they will give a reason why they are looking to law enforcement. And I think it's simply because they want to be able to serve.
Are there certain minimum like physical requirements you really do have to meet to be a police officer?
Yeah, so there are exits. They're called exit standards through the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. So you have to be able to do X and you have to be able to do 25 push-ups, 29 sit-ups in a minute. You have to be able to run a mile and a half in 13 minutes and 28 seconds. So there are standards that you have to be able to exit the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy that we hold people accountable to.
Well, somebody is listening or watching, and either they might want to enter law enforcement themselves, looking at a change of career, or know somebody that might be interested in working for the Fishers Police Department. How does one apply?
So we have an application process that's online. If you go to our website, the Fishers Police Department site, there is a link that you can go directly to, and it will take you to our online application. That's how they apply.
Excellent. That's a good explanation of where you're going with your recruitment activities. Anything you would like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think it's important also to know that that the applicant themselves, I am willing to take phone calls, return phone. There's a lot of questions that people have when they're getting into law enforcement, especially if they've never been a police officer before. That I love to be able to have those conversations with people and direct them whichever way that they think they may have to go. I've had opportunities to be able to steer a person who basically didn't really understand what policing was and direct them away from it simply because they didn't feel like they had the skill. But most people, they just want to be directed and they want to be told. And I think that is where we can find those people who this might be the place for them.
Brad Myers, Officer Brad Myers, hiring and training with the Fishers Police Department. Officer Myers, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
That's it for my first episode of Fridays with Larry. And if all goes well, I will be back each Friday with another edition of this podcast series. Stop in anytime at Citizens State Bank, the new sponsor of my podcast series. The Fishers location is right in the center of downtown Fishers Nickel Plate District, 9 Municipal Drive. Thanks for being here. Be safe and be kind.